Hey everybody! So this week we are organizing our research papers, and in this slideshow I want to share with you the information both in the prompt that you saw shared last week when you chose your topics, and some examples I think should hopefully help illustrate what this looks like in a successful research paper. So to start with your introduction should define or explain the issue or problem that your paper's thesis seeks to address and answer. Your introduction should fairly summarize all or both sides of the issue before transitioning toward your own point of view. So the idea here is that before a reader can really appreciate your unique point of view, it's helpful to kind of understand what other points of view are out there, what the problem is, right? You need to define your problem before you can really provide a solution. So your introduction is a place to explain and define your problem, explain the other points of view that exist, and then say, here's where I fit in this conversation. Your introduction, of course, needs a thesis statement. That thesis statement should be direct and make a persuasive claim. That means that you do not only just introduce your topic, it means that you have an opinion that you share with your reader what you hope that they will agree with you on by the time you finish the paper. Then you foreshadow your paper's biggest main ideas, and this means that you not only make your claim, but you give a brief idea of where you're headed. You don't need to summarize every subpoint, but you just give a few phrases that help your reader map out where your paper is going to go. So I have an example here. So say my paper is about ethical breeding in the United States. My introduction might say, over 6 million animals end up in an animal shelter each year in the United States. Meanwhile, over 2 million puppies are sold from puppy mills each year. These two statistics represent two situations no dog should find itself in: surrendered from its family or in an unsafe or inhumane breeding operation. While some people argue that the only solution to this problem is for future pet owners to only adopt dogs already in shelters or foster programs, that solution overlooks that some families cannot afford the unknown health problems or intensive training that neglected or traumatized dogs might need. A third solution, which would not ignore the problem but also would not eliminate all breeders, should be considered. The United States should impose stricter regulations to ensure that dogs are only bred once a year, that breeding decisions are made with the health of the mother and puppies in mind, and that breeders ensure that dogs go to families prepared for the responsibilities of dog ownership. So here you'll see that I did a few things. In the first few sentences, I explained the problem. I said, here are the statistics, here is the problem that they speak to, and then I transitioned into some different points of view that exist on the topic. Then, as you'll notice in the last few sentences, I say I have a third solution. I think that the United States needs to impose stricter regulations and that these solutions are going to help solve the problem. So once you finish your introduction, you'll obviously move into your main body paragraphs. And the prompt points out a few things that your main body paragraphs need to do. First, your paragraphs need to be built around a topic sentence that directly supports your thesis statement. So every single one of your paragraphs needs to start with a sentence that links back to your overall idea. So these paragraphs should also include evidence and analysis, which means that after you make a claim, you back up with examples. Often these examples in a research paper will come directly from your research, and then you'll analyze your examples. And then you want to always start a paragraph with your own unique claim. So that means that you need to use research to support that claim. And then you want to make sure to analyze your research and explain how and why it helps prove your point. So an example of what this might look like. If you remember, I made up a silly example of a source for my annotated bibliography lecture last week, and here I build that into a body paragraph. I say, although pet ownership has many benefits for families with children, owning a dog can also be beneficial to a single adult. And puppies are the best thing ever. John Smith explains the many benefits of pet ownership. He especially highlights the health and emotional benefits from increased exercise to emotional support, saying, "With all the benefits dogs bring to our lives, I don't see why anyone would ever not want to adopt a dog." Although Smith's argument overlooks the potential risks of owning a dog, like financial costs or allergies, his enthusiastic endorsement of dog ownership and its benefit should encourage single, financially stable adults to adopt a new running partner and friend. So do you see what I do here? I start with a claim that is my own unique point of view and not John Smith's. So I start with my point of view that pet ownership is beneficial to a single adult. You'll also see that I have a nice transition where I remind my reader what point they just read about. You can tell that I probably just wrote a paragraph about the benefits of pet ownership for families with children. And now I'm moving into a paragraph about why single adults also should adopt dogs. So before I ever mention my research, I make sure that this paragraph, it sounds like my ideas. I'm just using John Smith to help me out a little bit. So once I get that idea stated, then I move into the critic that's going to help me out a little bit, or the source that's going to help me out a little bit. So then I move into my research. You'll see that some of this is directly taken from my annotated bibliography, just the language got cleaned up a little bit. And then, so I've got my description. I don't only quote the article, but I also do some explanation around it. I frame it into my own words as well as the direct quote one that I share. And then you'll notice that the end of this paragraph is analysis. That last sentence is me helping explain how John Smith's idea connects to the idea that I put forward in the first sentence. That's analysis, is linking those two things. So you're also required in at least one paragraph to acknowledge an alternative point of view and explain how it fits into your broader argument. There's several ways that this could be. You could think that it's a weak argument. You might refute it. You might think that even though it makes a good point, the evidence for your own point of view is stronger. So hopefully you've come across at least one source with which you disagree, or one point of view with which you disagree. And you'll want to be able to incorporate that into your paper. So an example of that, I'm going back now to the example of the dog breeding situation. And I say, although there are many benefits to stricter regulations around dog breeding in the United States, opponents to all legal breeding argue that ethical breeding still leaves many dogs in shelters across the country. They also point out that no matter how careful breeders are to ensure that their dogs are adopted by families who are responsible and prepared, no screening can perfectly predict how long-term a home will be. Further, crises will continue to affect families, leaving them unable to care for their pets. These opponents bring up a very good point. For the foreseeable future, dogs will need to be adopted from shelters. The answer, though, is not to end all ethical breeding. Rather, organizations like the American Kennel Club should invest heavily in campaigns to connect shelter animals with families while also supporting scaled-down ethical breeding. So hopefully you can see here that I am saying, yes, there's a point of view that I disagree with. Yes, they've got some very good points, and I'm going to, part of a good paper is being able to acknowledge when someone else has a good idea that might challenge your own point of view. I'm from Minnesota, so I always use the example, having grown up there and enjoyed the time that I spent living there, I'd say, say that I wanted to write a paper about how everyone should move to Minnesota. And I mention, cool parks, nice outdoor activities. We've got the Mall of America and good sports teams, or, whatever I want to share that I think should convince people to move to the city I grew up in. And I don't mention a thing about the cold. Most people are going to look at me and say, there's no way that I'm going to move there, and there's no way I'm taking you seriously, because you're ignoring the biggest reason why people don't want to move there. You're ignoring the reason why you don't want to live there. So I think that being able to predict the oppositions that people are going to have and respond to them is going to be a sign of a well thought out argument. So finally, your conclusion. Your conclusion should briefly summarize your big ideas in 2 or 3 sentences. That's okay, but you don't want your whole conclusion to be summary. Your conclusion should mostly focus on questions like, why does this paper's argument matter? What should the reader do, think, or feel after reading this paper? What issues or questions aren't answered in this paper that still need to be addressed? Or what needs to happen next? And so here's an example of what a good conclusion might look like. By imposing stricter regulations, the United States can ensure that dogs are bred in a safe, healthy, and happy environment. By screening potential adoptive owners, breeders can ensure that dogs are going to a forever home. As of 2020, states have widely varying guidelines around puppy mills and breeding. If we are to move toward more ethical breeding, it is essential that we educate ourselves on our state's current regulations and reach out to our state's representatives. It is also important that we reach out to our federal government and demand the changes outlined in this paper. Only with significant cooperation between states and federal government can we make sure that dogs that come into this world have the best chance at a happy and healthy life. So hopefully you can see here, yes, I do summarize my paper very, very briefly. Like the 2 biggest aspects of my paper are touched on in the first 2 sentences, but then I move into the what do you do now that you've read my paper? Like, what's the next step for you personally? What do I want you to do? Because I have written this fabulous paper that you now obviously agree with. And what I want you to do is I want you to contact representatives and support federal legislation. And then I end with a strong kind of impact statement saying only by doing this can we make sure that dogs that come into this world have the best chance at a happy and healthy life, a little bit of ethos to end my paper there. So I really hope that this was a helpful slideshow for you. Of course, please let me know if you have any questions, but watch this through once or twice as you're thinking about your own paper and as you're outlining your paper for this coming weekend. Hope you all are well and look forward to reading what you come up with. Bye!